Muḥammad-Hádíy-i-Ṣaḥḥáf. Yet one more among those who emigrated and came to settle near Baha'u'llah was the bookbinder Muḥammad-Hádíy. This noted man was from Isfahan, and as a binder and illuminator of books he had no peer. When he gave himself up to the love of God, he was alert on the path and fearless. He abandoned his home and began a dreadful journey, passing with extreme hardship from one country to another until he reached the Holy Land and became a prisoner. He stationed himself by the holy threshold, carefully sweeping it and keeping watch. Through his constant efforts, the square in front of Baha'u'llah's house was at all times swept, sprinkled, and immaculate. Baha'u'llah would often glance at that plot of ground, and then he would smile and say, "Muḥammad-Hádíy has turned the square in front of this prison into the bridal bower of a palace. He has brought pleasure to all the neighbors and earned their thanks." When his sweeping, sprinkling, and tidying was done, he would set to work illuminating and binding the various books and tablets. So his days went by, his heart happy in the presence of the beloved of mankind. He was an excellent soul, righteous, true, worthy of the bounty of being united with his Lord, and free of the world's contagion. One day he came to me and complained of a chronic ailment. "I have suffered from chills and fever for 2 years," he said. "The doctors have prescribed a purgative and quinine. The fever stops a few days, then it returns. They give me more quinine, but still the fever returns. I am weary of this life and can no longer do my work. Save me." "What food would you enjoy most?" I asked him. "What would you eat with great appetite?" "I don't know," he said. Jokingly I named off the different dishes. When I came to barley soup with whey, ash-i-kashk, he said, "Very good, but on condition there is braised garlic in it." I directed them to prepare this for him, and I left. The next day he presented himself and told me. I ate a whole bowlful of the soup. Then I laid my head on my pillow and slept peacefully till morning. In short, from then on he was perfectly well for about 2 years. One day a believer came to me and said, "Muḥammad-Hádíy is burning up with fever." I hurried to his bedside and found him with a fever of 42 degrees centigrade. He was barely conscious. "What has he done?" I asked. "When he became feverish," was the reply, "he said that he knew from experience what he should do. Then he ate his fill of barley soup with whey and braised garlic, and this was the result." I was astounded at the workings of fate. I told them because 2 years ago he had been thoroughly purged and his system was clear, because he had a hearty appetite for it, and his ailment was fever and chills, I prescribed the barley soup. But this time, with the different foods he has had, with no appetite, and especially with a high fever, there was no reason to diagnose the previous chronic condition. How could he have eaten the soup? They answered it was fate. Things had gone too far. Muḥammad-Hádíy was past saving. He was a man short of stature, lofty of station and mind. His heart was pure, his soul luminous. During all those days when he served the holy threshold, he was loved by the friends and favored by God. From time to time, a smile on his lips, the Blessed Beauty would speak to him, expressing kindness and grace. Muḥammad-Hádíy was loyal always, and he accounted all things other than God's good pleasure as fiction and fable, nothing more. Blessed is he for this gift bestowed upon him. Glad tidings to him for the place to which he shall be led. May it do him good, this wine cup tempered at the camphor fountain, and may all his strivings meet with thanks and be acceptable to God. Mírzá Muḥammad-Qulí. Janabi Mírzá Muḥammad-Qulí was a loyal brother of the Blessed Beauty. This great man was known even from his childhood for nobility of soul. He was newly born when his distinguished father passed away, and thus it came about that from the beginning to the end of his days he spent his life in the sheltering arms of Baha'u'llah. He was detached from every selfish thought, averse to every mention except to whatever concerned the holy cause. He was reared in Persia under the care of Baha'u'llah, and in Iraq as well, especially favored by him. In the presence of Baha'u'llah it was he who would pass around the tea, and he waited upon his brother at all times, by day and night. He was always silent. He always held fast to the covenant of, quote, "Am I not your Lord?" unquote. He was encompassed by loving kindness and bounty. Day and night he had access to the presence of Baha'u'llah. He was invariably patient and forbearing, until in the end he reached the very heights of divine favor and acceptance. He kept always to his own way of being. He traveled in the company of Baha'u'llah. From Iraq to Constantinople he was with the convoy, and at the halting places it was his task to pitch the tents. He served with the greatest diligence, and did not know the meaning of lethargy or fatigue. In Constantinople as well, and later in the land of mystery, Adrianople, he continued on in one and the same invariable condition. With his peerless Lord he was then exiled to the Akha fortress, condemned by order of the Sultan to be imprisoned forever. But he accepted in the same spirit all that came his way, comfort and torment, hardship and respite, sickness and health. Eloquently he would return thanks to the Blessed Beauty for his bounties, uttering praise with a free heart and a face that shone like the sun. Each morning and evening he waited upon Baha'u'llah, delighting in and sustained by his presence, and mostly he kept silent. When the beloved of all mankind ascended to the kingdom of splendors, Mírzá Muḥammad-Qulí remained firm in the covenant, shunning the craft, the malice and hypocrisy which then appeared, devoting himself entirely to God, supplicating and praying. To those who would listen he gave wise advice, and he called to mind the days of the Blessed Beauty, and grieved over the fact that he himself lived on. After the departure of Baha'u'llah he did not draw an easeful breath. He kept company with no one, but stayed by himself most of the time, alone in his small refuge, burning with the fires of separation. Day by day he grew feebler, more helpless, until at the last he soared away to the world of God. Upon him be peace, upon him be praise and mercy, in the gardens of heaven. His luminous grave is in Nakhib by Tiberias. Ustád Báqir and Ustád Aḥmad. And again among those who left their homeland were two carpenters, Ustád Báqir and Ustád Aḥmad. These two were brothers of pure lineage and natives of Kashan. From the time when both became believers, each held the other in his embrace. They hearkened to the voice of God, and to his cry of, quote, "Am I not your Lord?" unquote. They replied, quote, "Yea, verily," unquote. For a time they stayed on in their own country, occupied with the remembrance of God, characterized by faith and knowledge, respected by friend and stranger alike, known to all for righteousness and trustworthiness, for austerity of life and the fear of God. When the oppressor stretched forth his hands against them and tormented them beyond endurance, they emigrated to Iraq, to the sheltering care of Baha'u'llah. They were two most blessed souls. For some time they remained in Iraq, praying in all lowliness and supplicating God. Then Ustád Aḥmad departed for Adrianople, while Ustád Báqir remained in Iraq and was taken as a prisoner to Mosul. Ustád Aḥmad went on with the party of Baha'u'llah to the most great prison, and Ustád Báqir immigrated from Mosul to Akha. Both of the brothers were under the protection of God and free from every earthly bond. In the prison they worked at their craft, keeping to themselves, away from friend and stranger alike. Tranquil, dignified, confident, strong in faith, sheltered by the All-Merciful, they happily spent their days. Ustád Báqir was the first to die, and some time afterward his brother followed him. These two were firm believers, loyal, patient at all times, thankful, at all times supplicating God in lowliness, with their faces turned in His direction. During that long stay in the prison they were never neglectful of duty, never at fault. They were constantly joyful, for they had drunk deep of the holy cup. And when they soared upward out of the world, the friends mourned over them and asked that by the grace of Baha'u'llah they should be favored and forgiven. These two were embosomed in bounty and divinely sustained, and the Blessed Beauty was well pleased with them both. With this provision for their journey, they set out for the world to come. Upon them both be the glory of God, the All-Glorious. To each be a seat of truth in the kingdom of splendors.